service, isn't it? Because I think it's quite it's nice to be here. It's good fellowship. It's music, great music, good dancing, and sometimes we can get very excited about it, which is not wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. But then comes Monday morning, we're back at school or college or we're back at work, and something just goes wrong there at work, and we just forget everything we heard about on Sunday. Sometimes it's like we love Jesus, but this relationship doesn't go deep really. So as soon as we're busy ourselves with something else, with maybe our TVs or our gadgets or with our work, then we forget all about Jesus. I also thought about, it reminded me on something like, I called it fast food Christians. Because I think about fast food, when you go into McDonald's, no mess, no preparation, no tidying up, isn't it? You just go in, have your food. I like it as well. Have your food, and then you go out. And sometimes I think that's what we do with our Christian life. Yeah. No preparation, you just go, we just have maybe the service, or wherever we go back home, and there's no aftermath of what we did actually, or whether we met to God or not, whether what we've heard, whether that's impacting our lives during the week or not. And as I said before, if we don't have roots, we tend to fall. So when storms do come into our lives, we fall because there's nothing to hold us from them. Roots are invisible, isn't it? We don't see the roots, and often we focus on our fruits, isn't it? When we think about trees, we like the leaves, we like the flowers, and especially we like the fruits because we can eat them. And that's very often in our Christian life as well. We're looking at the outcome, a prayerful life maybe, or ministry, being part of a ministry team in the church, or seeing other people maybe reading the Bible very often and all this. So we are very focused on that, and how much of this can I see in everybody? But the roots are not visible. So we don't know how strong the people's roots are. I don't know how strong my roots are until the wind comes, the storm comes, and then depending on whether I bend with it or whether I fall down. What the roots are in trees, in reed trees, they are important for the nutrients, you probably all know that, for the water that comes, for the oxygen as well that goes into the tree, but also for the balance for the tree. So it's very important that the root work is healthy, otherwise there is no balance in the tree, and obviously they haven't got any nutrients going up to the crown. So I think the roots, our spiritual roots, are also important for the same reason. It's important for us to be nourished, important for us to be stable, to have a balance in our lives, and also for us to have the water and the oxygen that brings us life, really. I want us to focus now on a different scripture, because I think although some of us might have some of this fast food Christians attitude or behaviour, I think the second one is more how Paul talks to Christians who have met Jesus and have decided to follow him. And I think that's probably something that might address more of us really. So if we can go to Colossians chapter 2. Perfection, just for you. Forget about it. So Colossians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7. And here Paul is talking to this church in Colossia. So chapter 2, Colossians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7.
As you have therefore received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith as we have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. So he talks to those who have received Jesus Christ, so those who are Christians, who have received Jesus as their Lord and Saviour. So continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. So Paul encourages his fellow Christians really to be rooted in Jesus, to be rooted and established in him. And I was wondering, so how can we be rooted and established in Jesus? How can we make sure that our roots are strong enough and go deep into the soil so that when the storm comes, we don't fall really? And I've been thinking about a few things here really. And I think the main thing that I felt, because that was driving me on that day to go out and to seek God, is really yearning for God, really having a thirst for God's presence, having a thirst for spending time with God really. And in Psalm 41, you probably in verse 1, it says, "After deer pants for the water brooks, so pants my soul for you, O God." And I think that's very important that we have a thirst for God. Because if we don't have a thirst for God, days can go past, and we've all noticed that, we've all been there, isn't it? Days can just pass by. Maybe remember God in the morning, maybe when you just get up and think, all right, let's pray for the day, and then all day goes, and then it's evening, we go back to bed again. But I think when you have the desire to really wanting to seek God and to be in God's presence, that's when God wants to meet us as well. I also think with the roots, something that we talked about this morning helps us to spend time with God, to read His Word, because then we have more understanding of God and our relationship with God. It also gives us the nourishment, the nutrients that we need for the day. Sometimes it's strength, sometimes words of encouragement, sometimes it's words of wisdom really that we can get by spending time in God's presence. Sometimes praying, which can again strengthen our roots, because we don't know what's going to happen, isn't it? We don't know the future really. So if we can pray and spend time with God, God can prepare us. I thought these are some of the things that can help us establish roots. Because remember, Jesus did say that troubles will come. He never said, as Christians, we have no troubles. Troubles will come, but He said, take heart, because I have overcome the world. And because Jesus has done it, so we can do it because we are His followers. So, not false Christians that have no roots, but Christians who develop roots. Now, these are things that we can't always do as a group, as a church. These are things that you need to do on your own at home. And I speak to the young people here as well. It's not your mom who can do that for you, or your dad, it's you yourself who needs to do that. Because it will then depend on how your relationship is with Jesus or how you manage in storms. And I really want to encourage us, all of us, because I need to include myself, in our business of days, to really seek God, really to make time for God and with God. You know best when it's an appropriate time, but I just feel that if we don't do that, we're not prepared. We're not prepared for what might come, really. And what really drove me there is really lots of issues. It was more health issues with one of my friend's children and family, and you can be so overwhelmed. And it doesn't need to be a huge thing, really, that can make you fall. It can be lots of little things, continuous pressure, really. And I think that's why it's so important that we are grounded. And I know we talk about encouraging one another as well in the discipleship, and I think that's part of it. That we are here for one another, really. And that we are here to encourage one another and speak life into one another's life, really. And we speak hope into one another's life. I also want to look at some bad roots, because again we talk about the Christians who might not have roots because they might not be mature, or they might not have developed a relationship with God, or they might not want to, or not have the time. Then we talk about those who are rooted, so who have time to do that. But then we also need to think about bad roots, because again, if you look at a healthy tree, some of the roots might not be as healthy, and if nothing is done about it, this tree will fall, because again, the balance will not be there. Oh, I've got the pictures, very beautiful. So that's the really I like for it. So that's the beautiful picture. I was walking, and then maybe you can go into the next one. And so this is the tree that I saw. I was really shocked because it's a big tree. It's not kind of a small tree. So it was just lying there, yes, being completely uprooted. And yeah, and then the next one is just what we're going to read about. So when we think about bad roots, the Bible talks about very different roots as bad roots, and I just want to think about a few that came into my mind because I think they're very relevant. Because again, remember, you can't see your roots. Yeah, so these are sometimes things that kind of are inside and they don't come out until damage is done, and sometimes it's irreversible damage, isn't it? Sometimes you can't do anything about it. And the first root that came into my mind is the root of jealousy. And I want to say, it's not just being jealous of something that somebody has, but sometimes it's somebody that somebody has. Yeah? Sometimes relationship that you might not have in your own life, but other people do have. It's not always material things, yeah. It's also emotional things that you prefer, you would have it, and you can't have it. And I think it's very important that we are aware of it, yeah, that we are aware of this jealousy. And it affects all of us, isn't it? It affected me as well. I've been jealous about things, and it affects all of us really. And I think what the Bible is encouraging us is to be alert, to be aware of that. So when this root of jealousy does come, if you notice, again we talked about conscience this morning, so if you notice that jealousy is rising in you, that you have a thought there, then you need to do something about it. Take it out, take it into the open. When I talk about relationship, yes, I know that this is something that has really bothered me a long time, and I remember when I was very young, and I know we talked about relationship, that's always something that has been important to me. So when I was very young and wasn't in a relationship, so to speak, I was always jealous of those who were in a relationship. So I always struggled because I was like, well, I should have somebody in my life, really. My brother and sister both had somebody. My friends had somebody. I'm kind of the black sheep, really, and some might be smiling. I'm thinking, but yes, so I really struggle with that. And I think that's when jealousy can come in. It doesn't have to be the hugest things, but I think these are things that happen in our lives, isn't it? When you're on your own, you might want to have somebody in your life, and you might be jealous because somebody might have somebody in their lives. So that's something to be aware of. The other thing is bitterness. And again, I think that's something that can happen very, very slowly, and can just grow and grow and grow. And again, bitterness can destroy your life. When you're bitter, again, something might have happened to your life, and you develop bitterness against yourself, against others, against God as well. This can really destroy your life. And again, if you think about bitterness, it could be just failing exams. We all did exams. I did exams a few years ago. I practiced really well with two of my friends, and they passed and I failed. And it was really, looking back it's different, but when I was there, I really struggled with it. And I was wondering, why could they manage and I couldn't? We practiced together, we worked together, and I felt quite bitter about it. And again, if you don't do anything about it, it can just grow. It can just damage your roots in your life, really. I think one thing that I've always been challenged with is discord. God wants us to be in unity. He wants us to be united. He wants us to be loving to one another. But very often there is some disagreements in church or in family life, and I think the Bible also warns us about discord, so disagreement, so fighting each other. And I really feel that this is something that we need to think about as well, whether we are sowing discord, whether we are sowing disagreements, or whether we are able to, agree with others, or at least try to sort out problems, really. And I think that is very important. that we are aware of this one as well. I think when we think about the Bible, there are quite a lot of situations when people are arguing with one another. And if you think about how they look then from the outside, if you look at people who argue, it's not something that you want to follow, isn't it? It's not an example you would like to follow. It's something that you more shy away with it than anything else. So I think this is something again. So it's more looking inside. I know what I'm talking about is more looking inside, because it's not things that people might say. You know, when we come all smiling to church on a Sunday morning, it's not something that I would know. I wouldn't know that in your week, whether you had times when you felt bitter, when you had times when you were arguing for arguing's sake. I don't know when I see you on a Sunday morning, whether there were times when you felt jealous. So this is really about looking inside in what is going on in your life. And I think that is very important, because that is what will take us further. You know, when we sang before, we want to see Jesus, and we've made up our mind, and we want to follow Jesus, and I want to be with Jesus one day. Now, it's good to do that, isn't it? We want to do that, but it will be our lives, whether we're showing it, whether we are actually shining for Jesus, whether we are actually showing a life that He will be pleased about. And these things will all matter to God. These will all matter to Him. It will matter to Him whether we will argue all the time, whether we have jealousy in our lives, whether there's disobedience in our lives. It will all matter to us, to God. And it will compromise the fruits that we bring for God and the glory that we bring for God. Now, when we think about disobedience, I thought about the example of Saul, because I think he was the first king of the Israelites. And I know when Samuel went to Saul, he had really good thoughts. He looked strong, he was obviously above average height, and everybody had big expectations for Saul. And you know what brought him down? His disobedience. So he probably had good fruit, he was probably very brave in battle, he probably had some knowledge and probably wisdom, or at least knew who to ask for wisdom. But what brought him down was disobedience. And it brought him and the whole family down. So these things about the root is not something just to look over. I think it's something very important that we need to think about, and that we need to challenge ourselves as well. Now, I want to end with Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8. And I think it's just something for us to remember or to think about. So blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and whose hope is the Lord. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and will not fear when heat comes, for its leaf will be green, and will not be anxious in the year of drought, nor will cease from yielding fruit. So this is a tree whose roots are really long enough, they go to the river. So when heat comes, they still reach to the water, so they still bring the water and the nutrients up. And also if there's drought, so if it's dry, they're still long enough that in the depth of the soil, there will be enough water to come. And that is really my prayer for us. We can't avoid storms to come into our lives, because that happens. There can be small storms or bigger storms. But what we can do is we can work on our roots, on our relationship with Jesus, really. We can work on our relationship with Jesus so that we are better equipped in the storm, so that we're not getting uprooted when it happens. And I really want to encourage us to do that. Again, as I said, it doesn't just happen on a Sunday morning when you come to church. It's something that needs to happen during the week. And I also want to encourage all of us to look at our roots. Are these healthy roots, or are there bad roots growing? And it could be anything really. And again, remember, in church, we don't see roots. So you could come with anything and I wouldn't know. Nobody knows. So it's easy to hide away from your roots, and easy to carry things that are not good and just ignore it. But when it then comes up, it causes damage. The trees are uprooted. And this tree that we saw, will not be doesn't stand up again. And we can pray for God to help us. And those who are knowledgeable about trees, you can, if the root damage is not as bad, you can kind of treat them specially so that the roots grow again. But very often it's quite a big damage. And I just want to encourage us to think about these things that we don't like talking about. And I really also want us to encourage, if we struggle to bring it to God and to ask God to help us, to maybe talk to somebody else so that together, jointly, we can pray. And remember, the bitterness and also sometimes resentment that comes, I have to know about it and I have to give it to God, because it will grow. If we don't do it, it will grow. And that's guaranteed, really. But those of us who are more have a more quick Christian experience, I would like to encourage you to really spend time with God, to really find out what is it all about. Why should I follow God? Why is it not just about I made my mind up and I've given my life to Jesus? Why is there more to it? Why should I spend time? And it's really about nurturing this relationship with God. It's really about growing in that relationship and to have a depth to this relationship. And I think God will